Good evening. This is our first Wednesday night to be taking a summer break. We take a summer break every year from our Wednesday night Bible study. People are on vacation. We lose 50% of our congregation almost anyway, all summer long. So we're starting our break tonight through August the 11th. And each Wednesday night I will probably just bring you a brief message like I'm planning to do tonight. Sunday morning, last Sunday, I preached a sermon on winning, and I referred to a pastor who lost a daughter to leukemia, who found a new meaning in Isaiah's verse that says, they that wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They'll fly like eagles, run with champions, walk and not faint. I paraphrase, obviously. But the purpose of the sermon was just to say sometimes we are not flying with the eagles. Life can be really, really hard, Christian or not. Sometimes we're not running with champions. Sometimes we're just walking. The only good thing we can say is we haven't fainted. And that's the power of that verse. They'll walk and not faint or not quit. So if you're walking and just putting one foot in front of the other and you haven't quit, then you're still winning. And then Monday morning, a tragedy occurred. One of my son-in-law's, a friend that he grew up with, lives up at Big Lake. They had a house fire Monday morning, and the 9-year-old daughter was trapped, unable to get out, and blocked in by the fire. No one could get to her. The fire department worked like frenetically to try to get to her, and when they finally did, she was alive but unconscious, and then she died at the hospital. And my daughter reached out just to try to find a piece of comfort, and nothing to say. And the mother simply said she didn't have anything to say, period, about God, to God, anything. Very understandable response. There are times in life when we really don't know how to pray, what to say. There certainly is no flying with eagles, and there's no running with champions, and there's no sense of great victory. I grew up with an uncle that I didn't understand. My Uncle LV was a little different than most of the rest of the family. He walked with a limp. He smoked cigarettes non-stop, chain smoker. He seemed to always have some kind of drink in his hand. And so the only time basically I saw him was at a holiday once in a while, Christmas or Thanksgiving. He would either come by, or actually once in a while we'd drop by his house, my mother's little brother. He had a son named Buddy, and Buddy was just a year or so older than I was, but Buddy was handsome, and the girls loved him. And the reason I didn't mind going to Uncle LV's was because of Buddy. And so when Buddy asked me if I wanted to walk down to the store with him, I knew that meant 4 or 5 girls are going to come out of their houses. And so it was kind of cool watching this really handsome boy just be fawned over by girls, all of them older than me, so I'm just the eavesdropper. I was in Vietnam and had a dream one night and woke up yelling his name. Nightmares were not uncommon in Vietnam, so nobody really cared or said anything, but I was so troubled by it that I sat down and wrote a letter to my mom, and I asked her if everything was all right with Buddy. And a couple of weeks later, 20 days or so, it took a long time for mail to get each way. So it was a little over 2 weeks before I finally got a response, and my mother had gotten my letter a week after Buddy had indeed died, and then sent me a response and said I wasn't going to tell you while you were in Vietnam, but Buddy had brought his fiancée down from Arkansas to meet his mom and dad, and they loved her and everything. They had a great visit, and then he was taking her back home to her home in Arkansas, and they had a head-on collision with a trailer truck, and both of them died in the wreck. And thereafter, my uncle was just a shell of a man. I never got to know him really at all and never had anything to do with him. About 20 years ago or so, my mother called me one night and her voice was really, really husky and sounded very heavy. And I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I am." And then, very matter of fact and very curt, she just said, "My brother just died. And if you have a few minutes, I would just like to tell somebody about my little brother." And I said, "Well, okay." And so she told me that Uncle LV had been injured on the farm, and he was already married and had kids, and his no money for doctors, and nobody set a bone right. So something happened in his hip, and he was never able to walk right again. Consequently, none of the neighboring farms would hire him and give him a job. And so, coming up on one Christmas and desperate and broke with a wife and 5 kids, he just bummed a ride to Dallas and told his family that he was going to go get a job in Dallas, and when he was able to get a place, he was going to come get them and bring them to Dallas. He got 2 jobs at gas stations, and within walking distance, he was able to rent the upstairs of an old house. Had one set of stairs that went up, and an old oil-based heater at the bottom to heat the whole house. But nonetheless, as bad as it was a place to live, and he could get all of his family. So he worked 2 gas stations within walking distance of the house. Someone loaned him a car to drive back to the country an hour away and pick up his wife, Winnie, and his 5 kids. The oldest of the kids was a son named Sonny, and Sonny was the pride and joy of my uncle. And my mother said that everything was wonderful just to have his family back. He loved his family more than life itself. And then one night, working a night shift at one of the gas stations, he heard sirens not too far away, and he could smell smoke. And then someone came driving through the gas station and said they thought it was his house. And he just bolted and ran, took off running the few blocks to his house. And sure enough, it was. When he got there, he tried to run inside. When he saw his family was not outside, the firemen knocked him down and subdued him because he couldn't get in the house. And they had to, a few men had to literally restrain him, physically hold him down. And at one point, Sonny, his boy, was about 9 years old, and he materialized at the top of the stairs. There was a window on the landing at the top of the stairs. And Sonny appeared at that window. And my uncle couldn't hear him screaming because of the roar of the fire and the noises of trucks and men yelling and people yelling. But he could read the boy's lips, and he knew that the boy was screaming, "Help us, Dad, help us, Dad." And he fought against the men trying to get into the house, and no one would let him go because it would have meant sure death for him. When they finally got the fire out, his wife was in the bedroom cradling the infant against her. The other 3 children were all cradled against their mother's back. And then the boy, Sonny, his body was found on what was remaining of the landing at the top. And all 5 kids and his wife perished. After that, he just disappeared. He would once in a while, every year or so, he would just show up at my mother's door, and she would beg him to stay with us, live with us. She would beg him to come in and spend a few nights. He never would. He would just pass through Dallas and show up long enough to let his sisters know that he was okay and to not worry about him. And he let her know that he would get a job now and then in some town, and then Sonny would appear and he would talk to him, and then they would think he was crazy and they'd fire him. So he would go back to the bars and drink more. And so he spent a few years just disappearing, drinking, and trying to get a job once in a while, and Sonny materializing anywhere and having a conversation with his 9-year-old deceased boy. And then one night in a bar, he met a woman and poured his story out to her. And somehow or another, that woman, God bless her, saw that there was still something good in this man and was determined to make her and him both sober. And she did. She brought him back to life, moved back to Dallas, got a good job at aircraft factory, and she convinced him to let her have a baby, and they had a baby boy named Buddy, who I just told you about a while ago. And so when Buddy came, Sonny stopped appearing to him, and life was really good with this woman and Buddy in his life. And then the tragedy that occurred with Buddy that I already told you about left LV a shell of a man. He had died in the nursing home that night. My mother would go by every evening after work and check on him. And that evening when she went by, she knew that he wasn't doing well in Wills Point, Texas. So she crawled up on the bed and laid his head in her lap, and he passed away with his head in his sister's lap. And after they came to get the body, my mother went home, sat down, picked up the phone, and said, I just needed to tell someone about my brother. I don't mind telling you, I was a little angry that I didn't know that story growing up. I guess you shouldn't have to know someone's story to respect them. But when I heard his life story for the first time as an adult now, I felt so bad that I had misjudged him and mischaracterized him. And so I found myself grieving a little bit of self-pity, wishing I could call back the years and behave a little differently and better toward him. It certainly made me understand him. Understand a man that never talked about anything to anybody, never talked about his family, never talked about God. I'd like to think that he talked to God now and then, and I know my mother made him pray with her every night when she would go by the nursing home and visit with him. But since the phone call from Allison, my daughter, the other day about their friend who just lost a 9-year-old girl, and in light of Sunday's sermon, that there are many times in life that we do not get to fly with the eagles. We don't get to run like champions and run with the champions. There are many times in life that we simply do all we can to put one foot in front of the other. And just in case you're going through anything hard, anything difficult, just in case you've lost anyone you love, or lost a job, or lost income, or lost health, if you've suffered unusually and unfairly during the pandemic year of last year, whatever may have occurred in your life and whatever crisis may have pushed you down, you should at least be comforted to know that the Bible did not say the only way to win is to be on top of everything. Sometimes it's enough to just walk and not faint. And so if you can just put one foot in front of the other and just don't quit, not quitting is enough. In time, weeping will endure for the night. Joy can come in the morning. In time, life will sort things out. Ecclesiastes told us there's a time to everything and a purpose to everything under the heaven. There's a time to weep. There's a time to laugh. So if this is your weeping time, my sympathies, my love, my prayers are with you. And I hope and pray that you'll just put one foot in front of the other long enough. Don't faint. In time, there will come some semblance of joy, some resemblance of the life you once knew will come. Hang on. Don't faint. Love God. There's a great song, if you have time to look for it on YouTube. Just Google No Fight Left by J.J. Heller on YouTube. You'll enjoy the song. I think it'll speak to you. God bless you. Thanks for watching.